Welcome, young and old, gay and straight, married, single, bisexual, transgender, welcome. People of all colors, cultures, and abilities, welcome. Noisy, wiggly babies and children of all ages, welcome. Rich and poor, powerful and weak, believers and questioners and questioning believers, welcome. Welcome, all you who seek God's graceful, open-hearted love and the beautiful new world that love makes possible. Welcome to Brentwood Christian Church.
Good morning, cool kids. I'm here in my very, very messy craft room the day after Christmas, wanting to share a message with you. The time after Christmas can be a disappointing time because we build so much excitement up around the Christmas holiday, but it doesn't have to be a disappointing time. I want to tell you about one of my 7th grade students. His name is Miller. Miller is a real short kid. He's quiet. He never causes any problems. Well, sometimes he talks too much to his best friend, but that's okay. But every day before he leaves class, no matter where I am in the classroom, he comes up to me real quietly and he says, "Have a good day, Mrs. Stevenson." And I was talking about that with some of the other teachers, and they said he does the same thing for them too. And it's amazing how that simple, small act of kindness can really make a difference to us as teachers. So my challenge for you this week and into the new year, as we are still facing this pandemic and the coldest months of the year and the long gray days of January and February, is to find one small way to make a difference in somebody's life, even each day if you can, with a teacher, with a different student, with a cafeteria worker, with a parent, a sibling, something small that you can do that doesn't even have to cost any money at all, to find a way to spread the gift of Christmas, which is love and hope and kindness and all those good things. And in the process of doing so, you'll probably feel a little bit better about yourself and the world too. In the meantime, until we can meet again, Remember, God is with us in the morning when the sun comes up. God is with us during the day when we run and jump and play. God is with us at night when we close our eyes to sleep. God is always with us, and God is always with you, and I love you lots.
Good morning, everybody. It is great to connect with you via our online worship. Today is the third day of Christmas, and we are always wanting to remind people that Christmas doesn't end on the 25th. It actually begins on the 25th. And so for the third day of Christmas, we thought we would share with you 3 of our favorite parts of the Christmas story. So I'll share 3, Emily will share 3, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation takes us. We're just kind of doing a laid-back conversational story. It almost feels like we're around a Christmas tree and we need to be unwrapping presents or something like that. I did not bring you a present. I'm sorry, Emily.
I didn't bring you one either. Your present is the gift of my presence here.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, we were going to wear robes today. That's why I'm wearing a tie and Emily is dressed up. But then we decided, though, just to kind of do a more casual conversation.
It's like a fireside chat. Our fire is the candles burning.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't turn into a fire. So
true Christmas story. One time I was wearing one of the robes and they have like the sleeves really like hang down. And I was doing the benediction in front of the communion table when it was sitting up here. and I raised my arms, and I saw a look of panic like in the eyes of the parishioners, like, and I didn't know what I had done. So evidently, like, I'm really close to getting the robe set on fire.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Well, do you want to start with your first story or first part of the story you want to share with us?
Sure. Well, I think I'll just touch on the one that you've already heard me talk about, mostly because you've already heard me talk about it, and I'll save the new things to come after that. I really love Mary's response when the angel Gabriel comes and tells her what she has been entrusted to do and who she has been entrusted to bear into the world. I think it's really important for us to recognize the revolutionary response that Mary had, and that is who the mother of Jesus is. The mother of Jesus, in response to this incredible, unbelievable news, responds with, God truly does amazing things, and God, the power of this God is going to be seen, and how those who have power are not going to be the ones who continue to hold it, and those who don't have any power are going to be given voice, and they're going to be filled in a way that they have not been filled before. And I really think it's a powerful message. It's a message that we don't necessarily hear tied to Christmas very much, and it reminds us that Christmas isn't just about what we individually are given, but it's about what God is doing in this world, and the justice that God is bringing for those who have not experienced good things in this world, those who have really been trodden upon, those who, we see it all throughout the prophets, the prophets crying out for the poor to be lifted up, for, calling out the treatment of those who are considered the least and the lost in society. And the prophets are railing against that treatment, and Mary is kind of picking up that mantle and carrying it. Yeah. And I really, that's one of the reasons I love that song, Dreaming Mary. Yeah. Because my favorite verse is the verse that talks about how she teaches this to Jesus. Yeah. She is part of the reason why Jesus had such a strong desire to do what he did. And anyway, so I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, if you all didn't, if you all didn't pick up on this during our Advent worship services, Emily and I are huge fans of that song, Dreaming Mary. Yeah. It is among our very favorite Advent songs. It actually is probably my favorite. Mm-hmm. That and O Come, O Come, Emmanuel.
Yes, I know. That's same.
It's like a tie. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was going to mention something related to the Mary story and Zechariah. Yeah. Because it's interesting to me that in the Bible, Zechariah is silenced whenever this announcement is made, and Zechariah remains silent up and through the time in which Jesus is born, and for me, it's just like a subtle reminder that sometimes it's important for men to not just try to own the stage, and for men to just not try to talk over all of these events and to narrate exactly what this means and what's happening. I heard about the Zechariah Advent Challenge for men, and it had to do with men just trying to listen. And in a world, and especially religious traditions, so dominated by patriarchy, I think it's interesting that Zechariah is silenced during an important part of these Christmas stories, and maybe it was a good time for Zechariah to listen to what all of this means, and maybe men could do a better job of listening in our world.
That makes this even cooler, because I mentioned that in my sermon a couple weeks ago, that I thought it was interesting that Zechariah was struck dumb in response to the news that he received, and then Mary's tongue was loosed, essentially, right, in response to it. And, what is God telling us through that example? Maybe those who often are given a voice need to just sit back and be silent, and those who aren't are given the chance to speak finally. That's awesome. I like that.
Well, actually, Emily, what it really means. We're kidding.
I'm leaving that in.
Another piece that I was going to highlight, so this would be the second story I was going to mention. This one's from Matthew. It's part of his genealogy, but I think it connects with this, right? The genealogy is not something that you really read a lot in church. It seems kind of boring, kind of long. But it talks about, the different generations that lead up to Jesus' birth. And, these stories, they're true in lots of ways. Their figurative truth and their poetic truth is just off the charts. I mean, they express so much about what it means to reflect on the power of transforming love, and that power of transforming love coming into our world when our world needs it the most, that changes and transforms all things. And so while these stories aren't always literal, not every aspect of these Christmas stories was intended to be understood literally, they are speaking with profound poetic and figurative truth. And one of the things that is in Matthew's genealogy, and the reason I kind of did that caveat is probably these are not literal generations traced back exactly this way. But figuratively speaking, what they do is mention some women who are part of the genealogy of Jesus, that without these women, then we would not receive the Jesus that we get. This beautiful gift, this expression of love in our world. And so this was like really subversive for the Bible to include that the genealogy of Jesus included prominent women, and some women in society that would not be viewed as prominent, but actually be viewed as outcast or marginalized. Matthew includes those in the genealogy, and so it is provocative and subversive. But I also just started thinking about how it's also honest. It's honest because within the traditions of religion, but also kind of in relationship to our world, a lot of times the traditions are remembered from patriarchal lenses. Yeah. But women have helped get us where we are. And part of the truth of these stories and part of the honesty here, not just the subversion, but part of what is honest and true about these stories is that even though history oftentimes wants to not remember the women, not write about the women, you take away the women from history and we lose so much that's been a part of some of the most important movements, not just in our lifetimes, but in history. And so even though a lot of times history tries to forget the role of women, the Bible includes the important role of women that bring us to where we are. And oftentimes I think that gets lost.
Yeah. That kind of brings me to the second thing. I can't decide which order I want to do these in. I think I'll do it. I'm not going to do it chronologically, but the second one it would be, and to call this my favorite part is a little, grim. It's not my favorite part in that kind of sense.
Yeah,
but
I see what you mean.
The mention of what Mary and Joseph and Jesus have to do shortly after Jesus is born, they have to flee because Jesus' life is in danger. And I think of the ways that, these stories happen today, right? We have parents that make hard decisions because of the safety of their children, because they're trying to give their children a good life. And every Sunday morning, we name explicitly who is welcome. And one of and obviously there are other people that are not specifically named on that list that are welcome, but we can't be here for, the welcome would be forever long, right? If we were to name every single person. But one of the groups of people that we name are refugees. And we say, if you are a refugee like Jesus was, you are welcome. Because Jesus and his family, they were refugees. Like, they did have to flee to Egypt in order for Jesus to be safe. And it's important for us to remember that part of the story so that it can remind us to keep at the forefront of our thoughts those in our time who are having to flee. And to recognize that there was a place in God's story for the refugee, and so there needs to be a place in our story as people of faith for the refugee.
Yeah, right on. The truth of these stories are incredibly relevant for the times in which we live.
Oh, yeah.
They're not just ancient stories removed from the realities of today. And the way they continue to speak so poignantly is really remarkable.
Yeah.
I was thinking this is another part of the Christmas stories that I think about not as a favorite, but as speaking a lot of truth. And so kind of in that grim way you described, but still part of the story, right? So, I mean, you know, not all the parts of the Bible stories related to Jesus and his birth are just like these heartwarming kinds of things. It's tough realities. Part of what makes them so true. But I think about the Magi and how they went home by another way. So basically they had been in conversation with King Herod, who feels really threatened by Jesus as the king of the Jews. Obviously a very different kind of king, right? A kind of a king who wanted to undo hierarchies, right? And so Herod, though, feels very threatened by the news of this birth of Jesus. Now, granted, the Magi probably would have visited Jesus like whenever he was like a young child, like in a house. The stories of Matthew and Luke are just kind of different in that way. And so it's important for us to try to figure out what's going on, what's the narrator trying to communicate. And the Magi hear about Herod's plans to do away with children. It becomes like this kind of genocide against the infants and against young children. And I think the tradition refers to it as the massacre of the infants. And the Magi don't want to play a role in that. They refuse to aid and abet King Herod. And I think about how there are times in our lives when there are dynamics in place where we need to think very carefully about how we might not aid and abet deeply problematic and evil structures. And that gives me a lot of pause.
The third aspect, or my third favorite part of the Christmas story, is what the Christmas story tells us. Like what is being shared with us through that story. So I know that there were a lot of people who grew up in traditions that really focus on the historicity of it, and I'm not debating that. You know, that's not what I'm lifting up. But one of the struggles that people coming out of that tradition have experienced is how to find meaning in the story if they start to question that historicity, right? You know, if they start to question whether or not it really took place on this day and this year and under these circumstances and
the big star,
right,
Jupiter,
right. You know,
Saturn.
so and again, I'm not debunking any of those things. Like that's not my purpose for what I'm about to say. I think that this story has something so incredible to say that has power beyond whether or not there were actual historical facts that took place in every aspect of the story. So there are a lot of people in this world who don't see themselves represented in the media. You know, don't see themselves represented in television shows or in, not just in the media, in the United States Congress or in positions of power or in boardrooms across the country, right? There's a lot of people who don't see themselves represented. And a segment of the population that is represented in the story of Jesus is an unsheltered family trying to seek shelter. And it's to that Now, they may not be unsheltered all the time, but at this moment in the story they are. And I think that's true for a lot of people who find themselves unsheltered. It's not necessarily a chronic lifetime thing, though there are those who do experience it chronically, and that's not to dismiss their worth. But, so for this glimpse, this small moment in time, this family finds themselves unsheltered, and there's just no one who's willing to give them shelter, except for that innkeeper that says you can go use the barn, right? And to this family is born this child that is seen to be the salvation of the world, right? And how beautiful is that we can find our salvation in an unsheltered family, in a child born in the muck and the mire, and that's how God comes to us. Like, that is incredible. I can't even talk about it without crying. Like, it's just, and it's, we so often want to turn Jesus into this great king who comes on this white horse, like the second coming of Christ is not going to be a child born in a manger. It's going to be Jesus on a horse, and it's going to be, coming and vanquishing enemies. And, that's because we just have such a hard time believing in the weakness of God, in the heart of God that is just made known to us in the people we least expect. And that is just the most incredible aspect of the Christmas story for me. Yeah. So
I'm with you. It makes me think a little bit about the candle lighting we do.
Mm-hmm.
So during Advent, we have different people light the candles. Each candle means something different. The candles represent hope, peace, joy, and love. And then the candle in the middle is the Christ candle. And you kind of light these leading up to the birth of Christ, to celebrate the birth of Christ. And we light those candles. And I know that all of us in church, and there are a lot of people in our community, in our world, we all make different things of these stories, and
mm-hmm.
we have different beliefs. Some of us, think one thing about religion, others think another thing about religion, and so we don't know where everybody's at. But during Advent, we light candles, and we light those candles because of the promise of love that comes into our world, and that transforming power of love. It is not the same as some big deity who's going to ride in on that white horse mm-hmm. one day with the big sword, and that's not the story we get here. We get the story of one who comes in humility, who comes in love. And part of the subversive truth of the gospel in this sense is that's what has the power to change and to heal and to transform.
Mm-hmm.
So we light candles during the Christmas season to symbolize the power of love that comes into our world, that transforms us, that changes us. And as one of my favorite theologians says, that kind of approach to God, conceiving of God not in terms of power, but in terms of love.
Mm-hmm.
That's what has the chance to truly save us.
Mm-hmm.
Found in human form,
And now may the sacred spirit made known to us in Jesus Christ go before you to show you the way.
Go behind you to push you into places you would not necessarily go yourself.
Go beside you to be your companion.
And dwell inside you to remind you that you are not alone and that you are loved beyond your wildest imagination.
And may the fire of God's blessing burn brightly upon you and within you now and always.